I say there's no such thing as alternative health. There's health or there's drugs and surgery. And it's just an alternative is a term that was used around the Carnegie and Rockefeller time and the Flexner Report to basically minimize other forms of approaches to medicine. And the term quackery came about. You mentioned, do people call me a quack? Sure, they might. This is a term that's been injected into the public eye shortly after the Carnegie and Rockefeller intervention and Rockefeller medicine, when they wanted to downplay every other form of medicine and raise the spotlight onto the doctors, or into the limelight of doctors who are basically learning Flexner-approved medication.
This is the Alden Report.
I'm super excited about our latest program. Look, we've been on television for close to 20 years, literally selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products and services that have had a positive impact on people's lives. We've created millionaires. If you've ever watched television, you've most likely seen me on television, not dressed like this, but in a suit and in a tie. Listen, we've re-engineered the process. We're allowing people, a small group of people, whether you're an author, whether you're a business coach, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you have a program or a service that you feel as though that can have a positive impact on people's lives, and you want to up-level your game. You're tired of what's going on social media. You're tired of AI is not kicking in. You're tired of all the money that you spent and you're not seeing any return. You're tired of all these fraudsters out there that tell you they're going to put you in Huffington Post or USA Today or Forbes, and it's nothing just but a joke. You want to be in front of millions of people every single day all over the country. Folks, we've been doing it for 20 years. We've re-engineered the process. We've made it possible for the average everyday person to participate in this. If you want to up-level your game, if you truly want to build your profile, if you truly want to get in front of millions of people every single day, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. See it on the bottom of the screen. At Mike Alden, put TV in the message, and I will get back to you personally and see if you're a good fit for us. Again, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. Send me the message TV, and we'll see if you're a good fit.
This is the Alden Report.
All right, my name is Mike Alden. We are here in Blue Vase Studios, and first off, let me say, hold on a second. I'm not wearing my 99-cent glasses, but here they are. I got my 99-cent glasses, which I always like to wear, just because I just look cool in them, I think. Right? I think. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about health and wellness, which is a world that I've obviously been involved in most of my life. We're going to be talking about healing oneself. We're going to be talking about vitality and maybe even a little virility. I don't know. I was thinking about that as well. My next guest is Neil Cannon. He's a best-selling author, and he started off his journey with his own challenges, his own health challenges, and has really now taken that and taking his own challenges and the research that he's done and the books now that he's written and helping other people with things that a lot of people are scared about, and a lot of people might not think that there's hope, but there is in fact hope out there. There are alternatives that people talk about now, and I think a lot of Western medicine, may be considered that. But he's going to talk a lot about healing oneself and ultimately just living the life that you should live. Please help me welcome Neil Cannon. Neil, thanks so much for being here, brother.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Mike. It's an honor to be on your show. Can't wait for this conversation.
So I apologize again, right out of the gate. I think I said it.
No worries.
But I was late, and things just happen. But all right, so
I was able to use the time.
Good. And you're in Mexico right now, so I couldn't text you. Or I think I tried to, and I couldn't. But so you're British born, yes?
I am, yes. And I got to Mexico very serendipitously in May 2020. I was actually in LA for the best part of about 5 or 6 years, and then the pandemic hit. And I had the option to go to lockdown in London or the beach in Mexico. So I chose the beach in Mexico. It wasn't a difficult decision.
I like that idea. So it's probably a little bit warmer where you are than where I am right now. But so let's just jump right into how you got involved in this world of helping people with a lot of kind of things and ailments that are quite scary, and for a lot of people it's the end or they think it's over. Tell us about your journey and how you started to study this and realize that there are ways that we can truly help ourselves through some of the most basic things that I think a lot of people don't even understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Just quickly, there's workers who've just started banging. Is that okay, or should I put these earphones in?
I think they're good.
You didn't hear it? Okay, good.
I got guys talking in the background too. Can you hear my guys? I don't think so. Usually these microphones too, right? They usually just they usually only pick up like, us talking. Very rarely will these microphones pick up unless the guy's knocking down a wall in your bedroom. But
that sounds like he is.
Yeah, we're good.
So yeah, thank you for that question. I'll answer it. So as you're alluding to, most people who work in holistic health, in fact, I'd say everyone who works in holistic health comes with their own story of healing or recovery of something. And otherwise they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. So as you said, I did come with my own story. I did have pretty bad eczema for the best part of 30 years since a toddler. And I was always given the same kind of symptom masking treatments, which meant it would always come back. So those comprised steroid creams, which have left pigmentation on my skin. You might be able to see it, and various other places on my body. Prescription moisturizers, which contained really quite toxic ingredients, harmful ingredients, and also antibiotics when it got really bad, which you might know, if overprescribed, really harm the gut microbiome. I got to talk gut microbiome, which is the very organ you want to heal if you want to heal any kind of skin condition or any kind of chronic inflammatory health condition, for that matter. So those are the treatments that I received. And it wasn't until my father suffered a stroke that I had my so-called wake-up call, if you like. And it caused me to investigate the condition that he was diagnosed with a few years prior to his stroke. So around the time of his stroke, I remember thinking it was avoidable. I just had this kind of innate knowing, this innate intelligence was telling me that he did not have to suffer this stroke. And I remember his sister, who's a naturopathic doctor and has about 20 letters after her name, a few years prior to this saying, Tony, you've got chronic inflammation. And he told me this in the family home. He was making tea. And he said, I've got chronic inflammation. I don't know what that means. And I was just kind of beginning my time in holistic health at that point. And I just remembered that moment around the time he had the stroke. And it caused me to go on an investigation, if you like a research quest to figure out precisely what this thing was all about. And very quickly, I realized chronic inflammation was the underlying cause of his asthma. He'd had since 12, a fully reversible condition, hypertension, and which ultimately led to the stroke. And also the eczema I'd had from a very young age since being a toddler. So I basically went around a change in my lifestyle and eating habits and got rid of it very quickly. I can't say it's quote unquote cured because that suggests it will never come back. I just see eczema and almost every other chronic illness as symptomatic of something going on beneath the surface, which would need attention. So if my body were to ever get inflamed again, the eczema can come back and alert me. So that's my story in a nutshell. And since 2015, I've been helping people reverse all kinds of chronic inflammatory health conditions by applying very similar principles, which have grown and evolved over the last 7 or 8 years.
Eczema, I had it when I was a kid. It seems to be, it seems to be more and more prevalent of recent date. I know a lot of people whose children who have had it and struggled with it. It's an autoimmune disease, I believe, right? I remember when I had it on my hands, and my hands were all like, I looked like a leper. And for me, I just kind of grew out of it. So let's talk about you for a second. Some of the things that you did do for yourself to kind of, get yourself out of it, so to speak. Like you said, it's not necessarily quote cured. It's just not there anymore, in remission, whatever. I don't know what we call it, but what did you do? Because, I don't know if you know this as well, but my world is health and wellness. We've sold supplements, we've sold topicals, we've sold creams. In fact, we sold an eczema cream that was made from eggshells, which is interesting. But so yeah, tell us about what you did specifically for yourself, because I think a lot of people are suffering with this. And then also maybe when I think about psoriasis as well too, probably in the similar category.
Yes, psoriasis I'd say is a more severe autoimmune. I'll just start with what I did. I went and really studied anti-inflammatory nutrition first and foremost. And there are a number of books that I read which just really changed my whole perspective on what I was eating. Because I realized that every day I was starting my day with essentially a bowl of inflammation. I had breakfast cereal with cow's milk every single morning, which I found to be inflammatory very, very quickly. So what I did is I switched to an anti-inflammatory diet. And for the most part, that meant going gluten-free, dairy-free, reducing sugar, clean everything, eating as your grandmother used to eat, as we often say, and removing anything fake, anything GMO, anything fried, anything that's been man-altered. So the hybridized wheat grain in America, for example, is horrific for almost everyone. I just went clean. And I actually went paleo for quite some time, but I'm not paleo now. Paleo is, I'm sure you know, grain-free. But yeah, it cleaned up my diet ultimately, and that made a big difference. And I also moved to LA, and I was in the sun much more, and I was in the ocean much more, which is phenomenally powerful for the immune system. Sun is the ultimate, well, it's often spoken about as the ultimate nutrient. It enables the skin to create vitamin D, which is a very anti-inflammatory hormone.
I love how British guys and women say vitamin. Vitamin. We say vitamins.
Vitamin.
It's the same thing. Vitamin D, vitamin. No, I just love how you say it. I did some infomercials with a woman who was British, and Chloe was her name. She would just say vitamins. But anyway, good. So yeah, so vitamin D, yes.
If you ever need translating, just let me know.
Yeah, no, I don't think. And by the way, I'm from Boston too. I'm not from South Boston, so you can understand my accent. But South Boston, sometimes you could barely understand what they're saying. But so yeah, so the sun, ocean, important. I'm a big believer in that as well.
Yeah, and then I was doing yoga every day, exercising, doing high intensity training, and I was vegetable juicing every single day. That has been a godsend for so many of my clients.
Let me stop you right there for a second. I want to stop you for more what you just said, because I don't know that. So people might have just heard the word juicing. You said vegetable juicing,
yes,
which is different than juicing how people do it. I think a lot of people think that juicing fruit, right? Bananas, strawberries, oranges, apples, they think it's good for them. Kiwi and all these other things, but there's a lot of sugar in fruit that people don't understand, which is a substance that causes inflammation. But you said vegetable juicing. Tell us the difference between the two and why that's important.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it just then. Fruit juices contain a lot of sugar, which spikes your insulin, and you don't want to be spiking insulin because too many spikes of insulin leads to chronic inflammation. And if you juice fruits, it goes into your bloodstream very, very quickly. So that then spikes your insulin very, very quickly. So that's not a good thing. So with vegetable juicing, you have a much lower insulin response, almost, I can't say it's zero, but very, very close to zero. And you're flooding your blood basically with micronutrients from these plants, from vegetables. And there's the added bonus that if they're green and fresh, they've been exposed to the sun. So you're synthesizing the energy from the sun when you're consuming these green vegetable juices, for example, which have no fruit or very little fruit. Some people like to put, say, half an apple in or something to sweeten the deal a little bit. But green juices are so powerful. And also, I love a bit of beetroot and carrot. It's higher sugar content, but also good for cleaning the liver, for example, which is essential for healing a skin condition. So I was alternating between green and red vegetable juices.
What about there was a big, especially out in California, you don't see that as much out here, but or some of these other warm weather places where people are fit and young and wheatgrass, right? And wherever I'm like, I always have I remember I had a routine in Vegas. It was kind of a messed up routine, but part of the routine in the morning was I would have a shot of wheatgrass, and I allegedly felt better. What about wheatgrass? I mean, every time I would do it, I would feel like 10 minutes later I'd have to run to the bathroom. But is wheatgrass really as good as what people say? Is it really that good for you? And do you do that as well?
I would say it is. I wouldn't say I'm on a regular routine with wheatgrass, but I lived in Bali for a while where it was available to us very freely, and I was drinking it every single morning, and it felt great. And they often say that one shot is the same of the same kind of nutrient capacity as a whole plate of vegetables. So I do believe it is a superfood. I can't honestly say it's part of my daily routine though, but I do love all kinds of greens, or most kinds of greens.
Are there certain vegetables that you would not juice? And also, what are your thoughts on I mean, I think I probably know, but I just want to hear you say it, like, organic. Well, let's talk about organic for a second too, because I was at a strawberry farm with my daughter years ago, and they were organic strawberries. And we would drive past this farm all the time. And I saw them out there walking with some sort of sprayers. So I said to them, I said, hey, I thought you said this is organic. And they said, well, the strawberries are organic, but we spray the leaves before the strawberries come up to prevent bugs and whatever.
Wow.
So in my head, I was like, well, they're not really organic then, are they? So that part, I think that whole world of organic is somewhat sketchy. But when you're consuming these vegetables or even some of these fruits, what do you do? Like, how can you really make them clean? I mean, can we at this stage in the game, or how do we, other than growing it ourselves, right? I mean, that's the answer, right? Growing it ourselves, yeah. But how do we know if we're buying it from a Whole Foods or something?
I think the best we can do, well, as you've said, is grow it yourself, or just seek the best farmers market and just really ask them what the quality of their vegetables are like, the produce is like. Maybe they're not going to say, yeah, it's not that great, it's been covered in pesticides, but I guess it's worth just doing a bit of research. Choosing organic at least is going to be better than choosing non-organic. So you're better than, just consuming pesticide right off the bat. Pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, anything that ends in acids is generally not good for the body, and it can create an inflammatory response. There's also, are you familiar with Kangen water or ionized water?
Sure.
You can actually wash your vegetables and you can see the oils, the pesticides come off them. And there's some which remove at least the surface levels of, the surface compounds.
Because aren't like a lot of vegetables too, the skin itself is actually pretty nutritious, right? Or so a lot of us are peeling our vegetables and not getting that nutrients that's in there, right? Because that's what most of us do. I don't know anybody that eats a cucumber like the way it is. So they usually peel it and then they put it in their salad or what have you. But isn't that a true statement that a lot of vegetables, like the skin itself, is also pretty nutritious?
Yes, depending on which one it is, of course. But right. I definitely agree with that. Yeah. I mean, certain nightshades, if you have an autoimmune condition, we don't want to be having certain nightshades like potatoes, and red peppers and eggplants, etc. So some have a very strong self-defense mechanism, their own immune system, and that can actually cause harm in our own guts. But for the most part, I'd say yes, there's a lot of vegetables and fruits that are good to have the skin on. When I have fruit, I have it whole because the fiber slows down the absorption into the bloodstream, and I'll often leave the skin on if it's organic. And sometimes I'll take the skin off if it's not, but for the most part, I'll consume organic fruits and vegetables when I can. But in answer to your question, the best we can do is research and find the cleanest produce source that we can. There could be a local farmers market. You can ask them about it. You can do a bit of research. It is difficult, I agree, to go really, really pure.
But yeah, I guess we just do what we can do, right? In a second, I want to talk to you about how one can recognize signs that inflammation is really the cause of some of their problems. Like, what are the things that people should be looking for in a second? Again, we've been on with Neil Cannon. If you listen to him for a little bit, his accent's awesome, right? So here from Boston, you have to just appreciate that. But you can obviously tell, he knows what he's talking about. And if you know anything about me, we've been selling health and wellness products, for 20 years. And when people come to us, we get agencies all the time that present people that want to come on the podcast, and not everybody makes it through. I saw this guy's background. I saw what he's done. And he's helping people, originally from his own experience. And I found that those people, like Neil said in the beginning, are really the ones that you should talk to, because not only did they have their own experiences, but they've also learned from others on what to do. And now he's also showing people how to do it as well. If you'd like some more information about Neil, you can just visit his website, vitalitysecret.com. He also has a book called Vitality Secret. It's a #1 bestseller. He's got another book coming out, and he also has another one as well, all again within this world of health and wellness, and ultimately how to live a healthier, happier life. So just visit vitalitysecret.com. All right, so inflammation. Like, I know when I'm retaining water, feel swollen or what have you, and that's pretty easy to tell. but how do you really know that you're suffering one with maybe acute first? Let's start with like acute inflammation and then chronic inflammation. What are the signs that we should be looking for?
Yeah, so acute inflammation is when one injures, say, an elbow or a joint playing sport or tripping over or something. It's when we have
This
that.
is water. This is water. This is not
Gatorade.
This is not Power. It's water in here. Just so you know. Okay.
Good. I'd be worried. Yeah. This is straight vodka. It's
organic,
not.
I'm sure.
Organic vodka, yes. So yeah, acute inflammation, we might injure ourselves, a joint, and we'll all be able to relate to the idea of the wound swelling up. It becomes heated. The immune system sends the appropriate fluids to the wound to repair it. And in a matter of weeks or months, whatever it is, it's healed. That inflammatory response is a perfect response to that injury. And more often than not, you can just continue your life as normal and it's repaired. It's in the past. Systemic inflammation.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to stop you there for a second. But aren't there instances too where you have that acute inflammatory response for other reasons too, not necessarily like an injury? I think of even like like people break out in hives or something like that, or or some sort of rash. Is that also some sort of inflammatory response?
It is an inflammatory response. I'd argue that it's more systemic.
Okay.
So you could if your skin breaks out, all of a sudden, it could be a number of things, but one of them could be homocysteine, or it could be inflammation in the gut. One of the first ways that we can determine if we're inflamed is any kind of skin condition, whether it's eczema or acne or rosacea. There's psoriasis. They're all symptomatic of inflammation. And also, if we got sore joints, chronic sore joints, that's also indicative of systemic inflammation rather than acute. Okay. So chronically sore joints is different to injuring a joint if you're playing a sport. So chronically sore joints, it could be rheumatoid arthritis, for example, or any kind of arthritis. And that's to suggest that you can actually reverse it by cleaning up the diet, removing or reducing exposure to all kinds of toxins, which ultimately what systemic inflammation is. It's the immune system reacting to what it perceives as an attack on it. It's a very healthy immune response, but when it happens again and again and again and again and again, the body starts to present symptoms to us depending on our genetic code. So for me, that was eczema. For someone else, it might be arthritis. For someone else, it's asthma. For someone else, it's gout. For someone else, it's high blood pressure, stroke, cancer, etc. All of these are symptoms of chronic inflammation.
When I think about like arthritis, so, my ex-wife has rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, right? Both autoimmune diseases. And I'm on her all the time about, she drinks soda. She doesn't drink coffee, but she drinks diet soda all the time. And I'm not going to change her, but I do, she's the mother of my daughter. So, I want to make sure she's okay. And I think about this, but and one of our biggest products that we've sold is a joint health supplement. And here in the United States, I'm sure it's like that, but I think here in the United States, it's more so than anywhere, because that's why we have the most drugs and the most drug overdoses and everything, because we all just want to pop a pill to solve the problem. But what you just said, or what you're saying too, is that a lot of these ailments and arthritis is a so you got rheumatoid, osteo, and just regular arthritis, right? And then there's a couple in between there too. But when I think about those people, because we've helped hundreds of thousands and if not millions of people, with our product, but I do think about what you're saying too, is it sounds so simple, right? If I'm in a lot of pain, for me, I will do a lot of the things you're saying. I'm gonna look at what I'm eating. I'm look at, my lifestyle, my sleeping, all these other things to try and figure it out that way. But here in the United States, despite the fact that people are in pain, chronic pain, they just want to pop a pill, man. Like, how do we change the psyche of people and truly get them to do it? Is it just what's the answer, man? Because it makes me sad, because I have a lot of friends and a lot of people that are in just chronic pain. And I think a lot of it is just due to their lifestyle and their habits.
Yes, I mean there's obviously genetics which play a part, but we can come on to the science of epigenetics in a moment, which talks about how it's the environment that signals the genes. Just so you know, I've got a few interviews on, well, I've got lots of interviews on my podcast of people reversing so-called incurable illnesses, and one of them is lupus. There's also rheumatoid arthritis there, and the story with the lupus one was, or the case study, the interview rather, was very poignant, because the woman who's now a friend of mine, we actually met at a biohacking event in London. She reversed her lupus in a reasonable space of time, around the time that she lost a friend to lupus, who was on about, I believe she said, about 25 medications a day. And she just chose to do something different to what her friend did, because she just thought the Western medical route doesn't seem to have an answer for lupus. So I'm going to go and do something else. And now she's in her 50s. She looks much younger than she is. She went all into an anti-inflammatory diet. And I can't remember the time frame. I believe it was within a year, but if she did it again, she reckons she could do it much sooner. She was able to completely reverse it, and she has no markers of lupus in her blood whatsoever.
The interesting thing about lupus, right? I remember when my ex-wife was diagnosed with it, and it said, I forget what exactly it said. It said something like, because lupus is no, like, from what I know, is there's no like definite, like you have it. It's like you have some of these genes that may have it, especially the kind she has. She has the kind that attacks her joints, not the kind that attacks your organs. And I remember reading that. I'm like, what does this mean? What do you mean? Do you have it or don't you? You know? Okay. When you said a year, and it's also interesting what you said there is this stuff takes time, right? Like if you really want to be in a better place, it's just not going to happen overnight. You're just not going to juice celery and eat carrots for a week and all of a sudden feel better. It took you 20, 30, 40, 50 years to screw your body up, right? I mean, it's going to take time to reverse it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You talk about that in your book. Do you prepare people for that?
Yes. I mean, first of all, coming back to your last question about the mindset, I think it's a really good idea to research people who have reversed what you have. You know, if someone else has done it, then it's possible. And what did they do to do it? You know, I'm not someone who needs to go and look at a bunch of clinical studies financed by pharma to determine if something's science or not. I'm someone who likes to go, right, that person's reversed what I've reversed. I want to explore what they did, because I know my body is basically biologically the same. So if the more that we become aware and educate ourselves basically of what other people are doing to reverse incurable illnesses across the globe without a single medical intervention, that's why I started my podcast, then we become more empowered around our own bodies, rather than just becoming, just following the conventional route, which most people now are becoming aware of. You know, it doesn't help illness and disease. It's amazing. I mean, of course it does in some instances. It's phenomenal in emergencies. I call it emergency medicine. When it comes to chronic illness and dis-ease, I find more often than not, it's actually harmful. There's a few exceptions, like insulin for type 1 diabetes, of course, although that's also reversible. Coming back to the question about speed, yes, it can take some time, unless you go straight into the energy world. I talk about the 4 pillars of vitality in my next book, which is physical, mental, emotional, energetic. And through meditation and tapping into the quantum, are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yes.
Yes. So I attended a few of his advanced retreats last year in Cancun. And what I witnessed, and I've researched him for years and done many of his courses, or a number of his courses, read his books, and I'm hooked. He's not the only one teaching this. I don't want to make it all about him, and he doesn't want to make it all about him. But the quantum realm, what we can do through meditation, like science data is showing us what happens in the body during meditation. And he's actually saying to scientists now, can you just confirm that there's new information in the blood? So people are meditating over 7 days, they're measuring the blood, and they got these anti-cancer metabolites and over thousands of new metabolites and proteins that were not there before they started meditating. And people are basically attending these events and reversing illnesses in days, which others might take years to do, by starting with the diet and exercise and sunlight and grounding and detoxification, etc. All of those are important. I just want to answer your question, because you can leapfrog all that and go straight into the world of energy, and we don't have to become a monk and, you know, a Tibetan monk is sitting on top of a mountain. Not they all do. But the point is, this is available to us, the quantum realm. We are energy beings. When we zoom in enough at us at the subatomic level, we are energy beings. And we are 99.999 many nines empty space or energy, and 0.001 matter. And the moment we tune into that and we really embrace that and become part of this field that we are a part of and we are connected to, it's phenomenal what we can do with the body. So people are attending his events, reversing the most metastasized of cancers. Autoimmune disease is the very name you can think of. Handicapped people are walking again. Deaf people are hearing again. Blind people are seeing again. I'm really doing a huge promo for him now. But what I wanted to just say is it doesn't have to take as long as most people think. The only thing is, most people would not start with the energy piece. Most people start with physical because it's most tangible. I just wanted to share that because there's so much hope for people if they think they've got something that's irreversible.
You know, first of all, I'm a practitioner of transcendental meditation. It changed
my
life.
Okay.
And the reason why I picked TM in particular, one, actually, because I'm a big Howard Stern fan and he talks about it. And Howard Stern was introduced to it from his mother, who was suicidal. And then there's just so many others, like, you know, here in the United States, you know, you get Ellen, Oprah, and just Jerry Seinfeld, and, you know, actually out in the UK is this guy there, tall, skinny guy. I don't know. I'll get him. Russell Brand is also a big practitioner.
Oh yeah, I attended his community in July. Yeah, great.
Yeah, what a kind of interesting character. But so for me, TM, I agree with everything you're saying. The science behind TM, if anyone is interested in, I don't care what any form of meditation is great, but the science behind TM for me, as for a lot of the stuff you're talking about, is, I mean, remarkable.
Totally.
You know, it's just, and there's a great book called Transcendence. Again, if anyone, but what you're saying too is, and I just want people to hear it too. And I think a lot of people are just so uncomfortable with even the thought of meditation. I think now that mental health is starting to become a thing, people are actually talking about it because of COVID, realizing like everybody's fucked up and we all need help. And I've been in therapy my whole life, and TM saved my life 10 years ago. That there are, in fact, answers like what you're talking about. It's not weird stuff. But I think about this and I get almost angry when I think about people who are in a bad situation physically. Like you said, genetics are genetics. And sometimes those are the cards you're dealt, and it just is what it is. But for those that aren't, doing something as simple as what you're saying, any form of meditation, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's just being quiet, taking the 5 minutes. I mean, you don't have to necessarily learn TM and do a mantra. I just know from what you're saying, this stuff works. But at the same time, Neil, I don't know if you know this, I'm also a lawyer, and I've defended people that have made crazy claims about mostly stuff that you're going to ingest, like supplements. We can say whatever we want here because it's a podcast. We're not selling that stuff, so I'm not worried about that stuff. But what you're saying, though, too, sometimes people, you're not a doctor, right?
Nope.
Okay. You don't have a medical degree, right?
Nope.
Okay. So then people should trust you, right?
Right.
But people don't, because they look at doctors here, especially in the United States, like they're deities. We all know, we all hear this stuff. Oh, you know, doctors only take one class in nutrition, if that. But I guess my question, though, is that there are people that violently probably disagree with you and think that you're a quack, right?
Totally. Yep.
Yeah. And what
Totally.
do you say to that? What do you say to that?
Depending on who they are, I actually spoke with a lawyer a couple of years ago, and I've run this daily Wim Hof breathing group in a community I'm in this brotherhood I'm in. And we all breathe together, we meditate together, and it's this really awesome community. And one of the guys started to get to know me and what I do. And he's a lawyer. And he said, you know how many people are just going to completely refuse to believe what you're saying? And I said, yeah, I totally get it. And the only reason I know this stuff is because of my own journey. And just like you were talking about earlier, uncovering all these fascinating stories of people reversing all these incurable illnesses all over the world, and researching pioneers. That's kind of what got me into the journey. But I had to have that jolt to get me thinking differently. And what was one of the major epiphanies for me during my journey, if you like, in 2015, I lost 3 friends to cancer. And I had this inner knowing, much like my father's stroke, that they did not have to die from this cancer. And I had this intelligence within me saying, cancer is not what the mainstream tells us that it is. And that is pretty much what I found out. Just before you, I was writing an article on this, actually, because someone's just been diagnosed with cancer. And anyway, during this research quest, I also discovered the origins of Western medicine. And I almost jumped out of my seat with the epiphany of the charge that's created in my body, because everything just fell into place. So if we could, you mentioned how doctors receive an hour of nutrition training. This is kind of becoming more widely known. And it's been all over the media in the UK as well. Wouldn't it be interesting to know why that's the case? And it goes back to 1910. We don't have to go into it now. It's a history, but let's just say something significant happened in 1910, which completely changed the course curriculum taught to doctors in the Western world, when Carnegie and Rockefeller entered the scene, and the AMA, and they all partnered and literally eradicated natural medicine and created a drug and surgery industry, which has become essentially almost a $4 trillion medical industrial complex. So once we understand the history of this, it starts to become more believable what the stuff like you and I are talking about right now. And I've said for a number of years, once we understand that, it gives us the power to then consider the other ways of healing. I don't even like to use the word alternative health or alternative medicine. I believe
when I said it, I was using air quotes.
I noticed. I was gonna circle back to that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm so happy you did that.
Yeah.
You know, I say there's no such thing as alternative health. There's health, or there's drugs and surgery. And it's just an alternative is a term that was used around the Carnegie and Rockefeller time in the Flexner Report to basically minimize other forms of approaches to medicine. And the term quackery came about. You mentioned, do people call me a quack? Sure, they might. This is a term that's been injected into the public eye shortly after the Carnegie and Rockefeller intervention and Rockefeller medicine, when they wanted to downplay every other form of medicine and raise the spotlight onto the doctors, or into the limelight of doctors who are basically learning Flexner approved medication.
Well, I mean, the father of medicine, right? Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine. I know you know that, but people don't realize that. You know, it's funny too. I thought about you coming on, I think it was last night. And again, this is my world too, right? You know, I've talked to people like you all the time. We've sold books and stuff like that are for years, millions of books, by the way, in the world of health and wellness. And and I remember talking to one guy, and it's like, let's think about this for a second. Because so you have the American Cancer Society here, like a multi-billion-dollar industry. And you have, you have the Susan B. Komen Foundation, again, probably a multi-billion-dollar organization. You have all of them out there, right? And the Dana-Farber, and when people get cancer, you want to go to these places because they allegedly are going to help. But just imagine, I know you probably had this conversation before, but let's have it. Like, what would happen if cancer were cured? If cancer were cured, hospitals would close down, drug companies would go bankrupt, hundreds of thousands of people would lose jobs, right?
Right.
And people would live longer and be happier, and no longer have to take these drugs that are now with chronic and manageable disease. My mother is HIV positive, right? And she was diagnosed in 1987. Wow. And when she was diagnosed, it was a death sentence then, right? And she was around everybody. This is when AZT was around. Everybody's dead. There's 2 of them. Her and her friend are alive. She didn't take any of that stuff. Wow. Now she tests negative because she's on a bunch of cocktails and she tests negative. But I see these HIV drugs that are on TV now, and the way they're fucking promoting them is just sickening to me, the way they're doing it. They're basically saying to people, take this drug, right? And continue to live the lifestyle that you're going to live, which is a bit of a high-risk lifestyle. It has nothing to do with gay, straight, but they are definitely pointing towards the gay community and saying, take this drug, so you don't get HIV. And then, by the way, if you do get it, we also have another drug that you're going to be able to take forever. So it could be a chronic and manageable disease, in which, by the way, you're probably going to die from. We're not going to tell you about that, but it'll be years later, and you're never going to be able to figure it out. And like, it makes me sick to my fucking stomach.
It's extraordinary what is allowed to happen. When I moved to LA in 2014, the corruption in the medical landscape was so obvious. It was like screaming in my face. And it became extremely obvious because of all the advertising on TV. That's not allowed in England. They're not allowed to advertise drugs on TV and then read out all the side effects or the direct effects, shall we say. Every single drug comes with effects, often spoken about as side effects. We're not allowed to do that in England. So when all this advertising...
Oh, wait, hold on. So you don't have antipsychotic drugs that are advertised on television that then say may cause suicide?
Exactly.
Depression drugs, and the side effect is suicide.
It's crazy.
And by the way, Neil, don't take these drugs if you're allergic. That's my favorite part of them. Don't take them if you're allergic. Well, how the fuck am I supposed to know if I'm allergic or not? You know, it's like it's crazy. Gross. It's gross.
It really is. I'm sure you've seen all those reels with Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer. NBC News, brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah.
This expert, brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer, brought to you by Pfizer. It's in your face everywhere. It's programming, ultimately. And when I got to the States and I saw that, it jolted me. You talked about how it makes you angry. A lot of my work is actually stemmed from anger in myself, because I'm seeing people suffering from all of this nonsense that's put out into the domain, the public domain. People suffering completely unnecessarily from illnesses that the body can heal. The body doesn't get sick because of a pharmaceutical drug deficiency.
Right.
The body gets sick because of toxins and trauma and cell deficiency, ultimately. And a lot of people they're not aware of the sheer power of their own human body. We are phenomenally powerful self-healing machines. And we've just been fed all this nonsense during our lives, thanks to TV and the mainstream media and whatever else. I don't want to put names on things, but it's obvious that there's a conditioning form of programming happening, ultimately making people victims as well. And victims to illness, victims to disease, and victims to, we just become a symptoms and disease maintenance system or a sick care system.
In a second, I want to talk to you about, some of the foods that we 100% just shouldn't eat and why. So at least people who are listening right now can at least get a kind of an understanding of some of the things that they should just stay away from in a second. Again, we've been on with Neil Cannon. If you've made it this far and you're listening to me, you can tell that I'm fired up about it and how I feel about it. And he's way more he's probably meditated a lot more than me today, and he's a little more relaxed than me. I'm dropping F-bombs because I'm from Boston, but the reason why is because I care. And like Neil, I've lost a lot of friends to a lot of different things that I feel are just unnecessary. So look, if you're watching and listening right now, and you're worried about your own personal health, and maybe you're getting older like me, I'm 47, soon to be 48, and the aches and pains are kicking in, and maybe you're noticing some weird things happening to your body. People say that with age, certain things are just a foregone conclusion. That's not true. And if you want to learn more about what you can do for yourself and for your family members, check out Neil's website. He's also got a best-selling book. He's got another book coming out, and he's got another one before that as well. Go to vitalitysecret.com. You can go to vitalitysecret.com. You can learn about what Neil is doing. From there, you can click over to his YouTube, his Instagram, Facebook as well. And then also, if you wanted to work with him, I believe you could. I believe there's a way you could also work with him directly. Years ago, I used to, when someone would ask a question, an older person, say, "How you doing?" And they would say, "Well, at least I have my health." And I used to say to myself, "Well, boy, those people have hit rock bottom." And then now I realize, as I'm older, that, and by the way, I'm on a bit of a fitness journey. We could talk about that in a minute. I realize that those people are just a lot smarter than me, because we all know it. It's a basic statement, but I'll say it. But if we don't have our health, I always say, if we don't have our happiness, we don't have anything. But without health, we can't even have happiness. So go to vitalitysecret.com and check out what he's doing. What are some things, like maybe specific foods or types of foods? I know you probably cover this in your book. I didn't have a chance to read the book, but what are some of the things that we should just absolutely 100% stay away from?
Yes, great question. Fake foods, GMOs in America, particularly corn and soy. About 85% of corn in America is GMO. When we mess with nature, we're playing a really dangerous game.
And for those listening right now, I think people do know, but what is GMO? I mean, I know what it is, but what does GMO mean?
Genetically modified organisms. They've been altered. The proteins have been altered. And with the wheat grain, hybridized wheat, so gluten, bread, pastas, if they don't
in a lab somewhere, some scientist, some company, Monsanto, which is a big seed company.
Monsanto's huge, yeah.
So somewhere along the lines, science got together and created something that is not natural that we may think is natural. In other words, if I go to the grocery store and I buy an ear of corn and it doesn't say it, because I don't think you're required to say it in the United States. I don't think it's a requirement. Maybe you do. I don't think you do. But so I buy a piece of corn at a grocery store. It's possible that corn has somehow been genetically modified. In other words, it's not natural. It might look natural because it's a piece of corn, but it's not.
Yeah, exactly. To me,
that is so fucking scary.
Yeah, it's
interesting.
Right,
like if you're eating fruit or if you're eating, by the way, I never really usually talk this much, but I usually think, I'm obviously so passionate about this. But when I think of going to the grocery store and I get a piece of fruit, an apple, or whatever that you think is good for you, and in theory it should be, and it might be, clean it off and you do all that stuff, but it could actually just literally have been created in a lab.
Yeah. Of course, they use the argument to make it more sustainable. And with hybridized wheat, for example, the crops used to be about 1.5 meters tall, and now hybridized wheat crops are about 1 foot tall. They're called dwarf crops. So it's amazing for the agricultural industry because they can yield more in less time. But what it does to our guts is really quite nasty. It can literally tear your gut lining. They've got all these different proteins now added to them to alter it, to create more yield. So interesting you mentioned corn, because literally earlier, a friend of mine, this friend I think I mentioned earlier, who's suffering from cancer, he put this post on Facebook about how he ate some corn and he had a whole body reaction. And I pointed him towards a documentary called GMO OMG. And they feature Monsanto. It's a really good documentary, and I've recommended this for 10 years plus. And it really gets us to understand what goes on behind the scenes of the manufacturing of the likes of corn and hybridized wheat. And there was a study that Monsanto did, which they financed, of course, to approve their corn. And from memory, it was 3 months. The testing phase was 3 months. What can ever be proven safe and effective in 3 months? Nothing, because no one knows about the longer term.
Hold on, wait. All the COVID shots were approved in about 6 months. That's all been safe. That's all been proven safe, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry,
wow.
we don't have enough time to go down that road.
I know. Yeah, right. That's a giant rabbit hole, but my goodness, I could not believe those claims.
We don't have time to go down that road. All right, so we got GMO. So anything that says GMO, if you know it's GMO, we're not eating it. What else?
I just wanted to say with the GMO film quickly, there was a doctor in Paris called Dr. Seralini, and he said 3 months isn't enough time to test whether something is safe. And he did exactly the same experiment and continued it for 24 months. And all of the rats, or I can't remember if it was mice or rats, but they developed multiple tumors on their mammary glands. Estrogen levels of male rats went sky high. Estrogen is often the cause of cancer. But they had liver tumors, kidney tumors after between 12 and 24 months. That's what happens when we interfere with the nature codes, and that's from eating things. Imagine what's happening in the last couple of years. So, as you say, we don't have to go into that, but it's just a good documentary to get your head around why we shouldn't be consuming GMOs.
All right, so GMOs, stay away from them. What else? So people, again, you could just go to vitalitysecret.com. And by the way, what a great website. I'm sure you must have paid big money to get that, but vitalitysecret.com, where you can learn a lot more about some of the stuff we're talking about. But okay, so what else? So we know we're not going to meet GMO foods. Is there anything else? Maybe give me like one or two more that you say, you know what, you got to stay away from this stuff.
Yeah, so wheat in America has been hybridized. So I tend to avoid all wheat, or recommend anyone, particularly in America, to avoid the wheat or replace it. I prefer replacing things, because if you say to someone, quit wheat, which is so much of people's daily diet, that's not going to be fun. So find replacements for hybridized wheat. Dairy is inflammatory for a lot of people, particularly cow's milk. Some people might be okay with various forms of cheeses and yogurts. For the most part, dairy is inflammatory. So if people replace dairy and wheat and minimize sugar, those three things can make a phenomenal difference in a lot of people's lives. I know they're probably the hardest ones to replace, because they've become such a staple part of our diets, but that's ultimately what I was consuming every single morning. Breakfast cereals made from wheat, not much sugar, because my mum was pretty good with sugary cereals, but I'd have, meaning not allowing us to have them. So we'd have breakfast cereals, which do spike your insulin, and they're made from wheat, so they're inflammatory, and cow's milk, which is inflammatory. Even when I was a young child, if I had a really bad eczema flare-up, sometimes a doctor would say, don't eat gluten or dairy for 2 weeks, and it would clear up. We weren't explained why, but that's what we did. So fast forward 20 years, that's what I've discovered. Back to your question, what are the food types? So we talked about GMOs, gluten, dairy, minimize sugar, fake foods, fried foods like fried and batter. I was once listening to one of Dave Asprey's podcasts, the Bulletproof founder.
Dave's been on the podcast.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's great. He's in one of my communities, actually. Yeah, he's wonderful. And I believe they said eating fried foods is the equivalent of smoking a cigarette, something like that. One of his guests said that. It's
I like Dave, but I think he's a little fucking out there on some of his shit. But it's all right.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I like what he's doing, but I think some of his stuff is a little bananas. But that's all right. Okay. I mean, so whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the best thing we can do. Oh, and of course, talking about organic. So if we can go to organic food wherever possible, I know it's more expensive it is always more expensive, but if we can figure out a way of paying for it and really choosing premium quality vegetables and also meats that haven't been injected with recombinant bovine growth hormone. I don't think that's meant to be allowed anymore in cows, but I imagine it's still there. Meat.
What's that saying, Neil? They pay for it now, pay for it later, right? Isn't that what they say?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking of. You were right there with me. I couldn't. Yes, exactly.
By the way,
invest now or pay later. Yeah,
it is expensive, and I don't know what the research says, but I'm willing to bet that you would probably find that if you had some sort of epidemiologist study disease, that you would probably find that a lot of it, especially here in the United States, is related to middle to lower income classes, and those that are wealthy are probably actually healthier. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, but it is expensive.
Totally.
Man, I grew up poor, and it's funny. You would see, I don't know if it's funny, but you see, how could someone be poor and below the poverty level and barely have food also be fat? It doesn't even make sense. They can't be eating a lot, but it's what they're eating, right? I remember we would get state cheese. Great, by the way, for baseball cards, to put baseball cards in, but probably not too good for you, because it's expensive. State cheese, man. We get these big blocks of cheese. Yeah, wow. Mark, did you ever get state cheese? No, probably not. No, Mark wasn't a poor kid. Mark was, you weren't. Yeah, you weren't in the ghetto with me, but Mark's back behind there listening. It did actually taste good, but it is expensive.
I imagine.
I had another guy on, kind of like you, but his whole thing was, it was actually more about truly growing your own food and what that would do for like the world economy and also for the ecosystem and things like that. So I don't know if you talk about that. I don't know what your thoughts are about that, but even in the inner cities, there are ways to do this. What about growing some of your own food? I don't know I don't even know what I would grow. Cucumbers, strawberries, like what could people let's say you're in the inner city, right? And you don't have any land, but you have an apartment and you can open the window and get a little bit of sunlight. Would you suggest some people try to grow some stuff? Green beans? Is there something like anybody could grow pretty easily?
I would definitely suggest it. The only thing is, I can't honestly say with integrity that that's what we should be doing because I'm not personally doing it yet. That said, I would definitely say that that's the way of the future. If we can go back to growing our own foods, where I was brought up, my mum actually grew quite a lot of things in the garden, and I think it really is the cleanest way we can go. Are you familiar with is it called hydroponics?
Sure.
Yes, hydroponics and
Yeah.
tender greens in LA.
Yeah, I have family members that are really into hydroponics, not for the stuff that you're talking about, but other things.
Okay, so
You ingest
yeah,
it just in a
so
different way.
right, yes, and in various legal states.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So
Great way to grow stuff. Yeah.
yeah, so we can grow these things with far
Water.
less energy than right. So tender greens, for example, in LA, and I'm sure they've gone beyond LA now. They use those to grow their produce quickly, and it's super clean. So I think there is an opportunity for us. And in fact, I think it's really the direction people are going in now. I'm living in this tiny little town an hour north of Cabo in Baja, Mexico, and the sustainable way of life is very much in our front of mind right now because food is getting much more expensive, supply chains are getting messed up, and people are moving towards growing their own things. And even in the desert, there is opportunity to grow food. So I would say that is the way of the future again, if we can make it happen. I know it's just going to take some effort and like a reprogramming of our minds because we've just got so used to convenience and ease where we just nip down to the supermarket and buy whatever we want. But yeah, in answer to your question, I think that would be a great way of the future. And I'd like to think at some point I will be doing that.
So Neil, again, I want to thank you for coming on and also accommodating me, and I apologize for being late. But before I let you go, I mean, I did briefly kind of take a look at your website. I saw all your, again, I have all your stuff that was given to me, and so if someone did want to work with you personally, they want to just skip the line, so to speak. Maybe they do want to read your book, but they just want they like you, they want help. If someone goes to vitalitysecret.com, can they do that? And if so, what does that look like? How does it work? Do they get a consult? Like, do they work with you one-on-one for a long period of time? Just tell me a little bit about your process.
Yes, so vitalitysecret.com, they can book a discovery call and you can fill out a quick questionnaire and we can determine whether, I can help you. But ultimately, I work with most people who have chronic inflammatory health conditions, if they're ready for it and want to do it. We go on an 8-week vitality journey and we cover the physical, mental, emotional, and energetic pillars of vitality. I'm doing the air quotes now, it's my turn. So that's the process ultimately. Sometimes I work with people for 12 weeks, but for the most part, it's 8 weeks. And most people will start with the physical because that's the most tangible. So which means diet, exercise, anti-inflammatory lifestyle, reducing exposure to toxins internally and externally. That's really the physical pillar in a nutshell. Then we have the mental pillar. So thoughts and beliefs, the language of the mind, and understanding the placebo effect and the nocebo effect, really understanding how we can use the placebo effect to our advantage. The brain chemist can literally create a whole concoction of chemicals in the body conducive to healing, or it can do the opposite. So we want to get charge of that. The next one is the emotional pillar, and that's understanding how most people can relate to how chronic stress relates or causes most illnesses. It's often spoken about how 90% of illness is down to chronic stress. So we talk about ways to reduce stress in the body, ways to release trapped emotions and trauma, which is massive. It's almost it's for the most part the root cause of illness. And there are many ways to determine what the traumas are, where they're stored, which organs the traumas are stored in, the trapped emotions are stored in, and very quick ways to release them so the body can become energized, the frequency raises, and the body can heal itself. I've said a lot. And the final pillar is the energetic one. That's the quantum. That's the likes of Dr. Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden. I'm bringing in all these brilliant pioneers and understanding and showing people what they can do with their bodies through meditation, through visualization, through walking in nature or going for a swim and just being present in just learning to be in the present moment, which remarkably does a lot for our biology. So that I've just kind of said it very, very quickly, but they're the 4 pillars of vitality. And that's how I help people. So they can read my books, they can join my online program or do private coaching. And later on, I'll be doing a community at some point, really diving into the quantum part particularly, because that's what excites me the most.
Well, again, man, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing this with our viewers and listeners. I think it's really important. The old saying was, your health is in fact your wealth. And if you don't have that, like I said, if you don't have your health, you don't really have anything. And I've certainly been aware of that, but at my age now, at 47, I'm taking it a lot more seriously. And I'm glad for me that I was able to have you here. Well, I tell people all the time, it's almost like I get to talk to smart guys and gals like you. For me personally, I feel like you're talking to me personally, and I always usually get a little bit out of it. So I know if I'm getting something out of it, the people listening and watching certainly are too. Again, folks, we've been on with Neil Cannon. If you're interested in living a healthier life, if you want to live longer, if not only when you want to live longer, but you want to live a quality of life as long as you possibly can. I told my daughter I'm going to live to 109, so I have to. So I need to listen to guys like Neil and check him out. So again, if you want some more information, go to vitalitysecret.com. You can pick up his books there. You can also book a consult call with him. You fill out a little form, and then you kind of go from there. My name is Mike Alden. That's Neil Cannon, and we'll see you soon.
I'm super excited about our latest program. Look, we've been on television for close to 20 years, literally selling hundreds of millions of dollars with products and services that have had a positive impact on people's lives. We've created millionaires. If you've ever watched television, you've most likely seen me on television, not dressed like this, but in a suit and a tie. Listen, we've re-engineered the process. We're allowing people, a small group of people, whether you're an author, whether you're a business coach, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you have a program or a service that you feel as though that can have a positive impact on people's lives, and you want to up-level your game. You're tired of what's going on social media. You're tired of AI is not kicking in. You're tired of all the money that you spent and you're not seeing any return. You're tired of all these fraudsters out there that tell you they're going to put you in Huffington Post or USA Today or Forbes, and it's nothing just but a joke. You want to be in front of millions of people every single day all over the country. Folks, we've been doing it for 20 years. We've re-engineered the process. We've made it possible for the average everyday person to participate in this. If you want to up-level your game, if you truly want to build your profile, if you truly want to get in front of millions of people every single day, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. See it on the bottom of the screen. At Mike Alden, put TV in the message, and I will get back to you personally and see if you're a good fit for us. Again, send me a direct message at Mike Alden. Send me the message TV, and we'll see if you're a good fit.